You know D&D, right? So, 2002, a new game came out, Neverwinter Nights. Essentially, it was Dungeons & Dragons converted into virtual reality. Just another game, right? Well, no. There was something very special about Neverwinter Nights. It gave power to the players to build and host their own private game worlds. This feature was hard-coded into the game. In many respects, it was the game. And it also came with a Game Master client to allow you to do everything while the game is running, essentially, to be the Dungeon Master.
Play beneath the all-seeing gaze of an all-powerful Dungeon Master, a human mind, there to breathe life into every aspect of your unfolding tale.
BioWare was not playing around. They gave the players all the power. Such direct democratization of video games was never done before. But that move was about to set forth a legion of creative minds. It was the golden age of Neverwinter Nights, the age of creativity and creation. As opposed to running a campaign with a few players and a dungeon master, like you would do in the pen and paper style of Dungeons & Dragons, the big thing in Neverwinter Nights was running persistent worlds. Those are servers that run 24/7 and have their own set of rules, mods and settings. That's where I was playing. So, still in 2002, while I was power gaming and bashing pixels away to my own mindless enjoyment, I started noticing that some players were talking to each other funny, like they were pretending everything around them is real, petting animals, leaning on objects, and greeting people funny.
Hey, I'll take
It was kinda strange, but at the same time, intriguing. It was then that I discovered that what they were doing was called role-playing. They were play-acting as their characters. It was kinda fun, so I tried to do it too. I pretended everything around me was real and I enjoyed it. It somehow made the gaming experience more special, more real, more, dare I say, immersive. So my new thing became role-playing, and I explored every sort of personality, including goofy, sexy, grumpy, stupid, smart. I was even writing background stories for my characters. I was so obsessed with exploring just how far role-playing can take me. In fact, I became so obsessed with role-playing that the server that I was playing in suddenly didn't feel hardcore enough. Role-playing wasn't even mandatory there, it was just encouraged. I wanted to find a server where role-playing is strictly enforced. Actually, I wanted the experience to feel so real that what I really wanted was Permadeath. You know, where you can only die once, just like in real life. No respawn option. It should be gritty and unforgiving, as though I was actually living in a fantasy world. Turns out Permadeath is very unpopular. It was very hard to find. But I got lucky. Someone in the BioWare forums tipped me off and I found just the server I was looking for, which had the unlikely name of Haze. It was password protected. It required players to submit an application to play. I did, and I got accepted. This is the untold story of Haze, and here is why it was so special and different, and why you won't find anything quite like it. First, it allowed players to be in positions of power, like being the mayor of a city or the captain of the guard. Second, magic was rare. No one was blasting fireballs at will or wielded a flaming sword. If you got injured, it could have taken days for your character to heal, and character progression was slow, very slow. That meant nobody was egregiously and unrealistically overpowered. Nearly all players were in the range of levels 2 to 4, and very few got past that. Third, the whole landscape was racially segregated. Dwarves would have their own place in the mountainous north, the elves had their own community in the forest to the south, and the humans were in the center. So racism was alive and well, which for a fantasy server just makes it more believable. There was also a gnomish community, but typically not enough gnome players to maintain it occupied. The entire server had about 60 to 70 players online at the same time during peak hours, so gnomes got the short end of it. But it was Permadeath that glued it all together. It was the only server that existed that was harshly unforgiving in its philosophy of death. These are quotes from the original player's guide. There is no respawn in Haze. Permadeath is the palpable law of the land. It's an emotion that will tear at your breast. No one in Haze has plot immunity, from the lowliest halfling to the righteous leader of the hamlets. They are all mortal. We all accepted it as fact. Our character has one life, just like in real life, and if it dies for good. No exceptions. Permadeath was the great equalizer. It made sure player characters behaved realistically, taking fear into the equation. Reckless adventurers meant a short lifespan. Permadeath also had the effect that no one was in power for too long, so if the captain died, next man up was captain. It kept things exciting. I would even just occasionally log in to see if someone died, their names written into the obituaries. Just yesterday I could have spoken to someone, and now they're dead. You would almost have this survivor's respect to players who managed to have their characters last for a long time. Because the server was harsh, there were enemies roaming the land, inhabiting the mountains and the passages. Orcs, goblins, the usual fantasy tropes. But even the smallest of goblins presented risks. Even the smallest of them can kill the character that you love and cherish so much if they get just one lucky swing. So, fear was always there, and you could only play one character at a time. Only after the character you created died could you play another. And epic battles would occur. Many player characters died, and those players never played again. Moreover, the server wasn't afraid to change based on such events. A whole community could lose its home, its town, and had to adjust to a new routine, live in the forest perhaps. Such events didn't happen often, but they did happen. It was a dynamic environment. Everything could change in the landscape based on the unfolding of events and the actions and decisions that the players took. When the human citadel fell, those who managed to survive fled south to the elves. But the elves wouldn't let them into their forest. This was all in the spirit of role-playing. The players who played as the elves behaved as their characters would, and therefore, due to their elven laws, did not agree that humans would live among them in their sacred forest. This dynamic between the elven players and the human players allowed for great role-playing to prosper and created more interest, intrigue and drama, and that kind of stuff fuels the fire of role-playing. Now eventually those same human refugees built a new town from scratch. This didn't happen in a day or in a week. They had to collect all the resources to be able to do that. Keep in mind, this was around 2003-2004. There were no fancy survival games where you craft and build your own house like we have these days. That kind of stuff wasn't built into Neverwinter Nights, and players played in roles vital to the community. That's kinda why we didn't have a lot of NPCs, because we were the NPCs, or rather, we played in NPC-like roles. Some were the guards in the militia, some were the blacksmith, some were traders. So we weren't just a rabble of adventurers or heroes looking for the next quest or waiting for the next Dungeon Master event, but rather we maintained our own town, our own economy, which was highly player-driven. We maintained our own army and our own laws and order. Sometimes it was tricky since unlike NPCs, players aren't always online, but we worked around it and it was never a major problem. Haze made me feel like a character from a fantasy novel, like it was a part of an epic story that could go either way. My character could die and that would be it, or my character could be the hero. Either way, epic stories and wars have a long build-up to main events, and our characters lived through that build-up. Not every day you go on an exciting adventure. My character lived the structured life of a guard, filling reports, fixing a breach in the wall, maintaining law and order, going on patrols and standing guard. That could sound boring, granted, but there was a lot to be played out, even when big action events didn't happen. After all, not every day the guard in Gondor's capital had to face the army of Mordor, but it's the fact that we played our characters' daily existence that made those build-up action events so special, especially knowing that we could lose that existence for good. All the bonds that we formed, all the relationships we had in character would be gone. It was brutal. That harsh reality kept things very exciting, even when there was no action. Though, often we made our own action. There was drama, elections, marriages, sparring competitions, exploration expeditions, and journeys to the frozen north to trade with the dwarves, or to the southern forests to trade with the elves. All of them were players, all of them living in that microcosm of a world. And when a big event did happen, like an epic fight, my God, I felt I was there. Would this be the end? Would we all die? Or would we all have a moment of great elation, victorious upon our enemies?
Victory! We have victory!
In my mind, there was no end to the immersion and where it could take us. But Haze no longer exists, so I guess the big question now is what happened to this game world? Well, it all came down to a big epic war in which all races participated. Imagine a good versus evil event. It was dozens of players all in one area battling it out. It was a PvE battle, meaning the other side was controlled by dungeon masters. Anyway, so all the players of all the races fought against the army of darkness this day. In the end, good has prevailed, despite many casualties. Thing is, after that big fight, it was kinda like the end of a story, the end of a really good book. The server was still up, but nothing new was happening, so players began to leave and the server slowly disintegrated on its own. There were attempts to recreate Haze's sense, but they were never quite able to capture the magic of that first server. Haze showed me the power of immersive gaming, and it's partly the inspiration for this channel. The reason I'm continuing its legacy is because I don't want it to be forgotten. It's a part of myself. It was important for me to tell the story of Haze to you because knowing such a game world can exist and be so good inspires me to keep its spirit alive somehow, keep its torch lit, and not give up on the dream of seeing it recreated. Graphics has certainly improved in the past 17 years, but immersion in multiplayer games is all about the collective atmosphere we create as a whole. So this, with its poor old graphics, felt light years more immersive than everything we have today. I hope you enjoyed the story of Haze. I want to give special thanks to Peter Ridgeway, who with much love and dedication recreated the landscape of the original Haze server, which is what I used for this video in my recreations. Thank you for watching, and till next time.